Welcome back. Hope you had a good Easter. You know, even in a decaying Christendom, there is something so heartening about Sunday service on Easter morn with the church pews packed as they rarely are. And, oh, wait, no, sorry, my mistake. That was the old Easter, before the state rolled the stone in front of the church door. So the hosannas were decidedly muted yesterday. Singing remains forbidden in California churches. In Spain, they've taken the additional precaution of banning hymnals. In Greece, they've banned loudspeakers, just in case you're tempted to hold an outdoor service. But really, why not just cut to the chase? In Ireland, all in-person services are illegal. And like Father Hughes in Mullahoran, who said Mass to 40 congregants, you'll get a €500 fine if you're minded to try it. And Pastor Cronin at the Abundant Grace Church in Dublin was arrested mid-service. In one of posterity's little jests, an Irish Catholic is currently only free to practice his religion if he heads north across the border, where under the tyrannous British Protestant yoke, the churches are open, unlike down south. However, don't get carried away. What the state giveth, the state can take away. Here's British coppers in South London seizing the pulpit and closing down worship in mid-service.
It is Good Friday, and I appreciate you would like to worship, that this gathering is unlawful, so please may you leave the building now.
What's the proper response to that? Here's Pastor Arthur Pavlovsky in Calgary, Alberta.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Okay. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant.
He called them Nazis and the Gestapo. Preach it, preacher man. And through the sheer power of his words, he drove the coppers down the stairs like Jesus throwing the money changers out of the temple. For it is written, my house shall be called the house of prayer, and ye are not going to make it a den of totalitarian goons. The only people committing a crime there were Her Majesty's miserable and unworthy Calgary Constabulary, who were in breach of Section 176 of the Canadian Criminal Code. Quote, everyone who willfully disturbs or interrupts an assemblage of persons met for religious worship is guilty of an offence punishable on summary conviction. That's a slam dunk, and that Canadian pastor should file a complaint with, the police. There is a tragic element to the diminished state of the Christian churches a year into this thing. If ever there were a huge opportunity for religious ministry, a world in which everything else is dead, movies, shows, sports, concerts, restaurants, all the noisy distractions of the secular consumerist life is surely it. Yet for the most part, starting with the social justice pontiff in the Vatican blaming COVID on climate change, the churches blew it. And saddest of all, an unchurched year has seen church membership in the US fall for the first time below 50% of Americans, which is a pity, because when the churches fall silent, the only religion left is the state. Joining me now, the one and only Naomi, author of The End of America, and also a senior fellow at the American Institute of Economic Research. Naomi, it seems terribly bizarre that at this stage in Western civilization, we should be talking about such things as the right of religious observant fellows to go to a church and worship on Easter morning. But apparently that's what it's come down to.
I mean, you're right to invoke historical echoes, Mark. We have to face where we are if we're going to survive it. There is a war on humanity. There's a war on religion. There's a war on human assembly. Big tech wants to drive everyone indoors and dissolve the bonds between people. The guy, I've said this many times in recent days, but the real pandemic, which is now an endemic, it's turning into something we live with every year, has provided cover for very dark forces to terrorize human assembly and to do what you're right to point out is illegal, which is to violate the Constitution, First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Now there's vaccine passports rolling out to violate the Americans with Disabilities Act, to assault the ways in which human beings gather strength and community from each other, so that there will be, as you point out, kind of new overlords. And it doesn't have to be that kind of mystical. You just look at the 5 big tech bros. They're up 22 billion to over 100 billion since March of 2020. There is a war against human beings, and the right to worship is one of the, tyrants on the left and the right, totalitarian states always go after churches and synagogues and mosques, always try to target outspoken clergy and target the idea of faith, because that's where people derive strength and community from.
Well, and also because it's one of the alternative sources of power in any society, and they see that. You've found an organization that is actually committed to turning this around, and has 5 basic principles, some of which I never thought we'd actually need to type out, but saying no more permanent emergencies, which is what we're living with.
Right. So, ever since the pandemic broke out, people have been asking me to update a book I wrote in 2008 called The End of America, which you mentioned. And we're at step 10. I argued then that there are 10 steps to fascism. And, here we are. Emergency law is the 10th step. And in Massachusetts, I live under emergency law. Next door, New York lives under emergency law. There's emergency law in California. This is the end of democracy, and they are not giving up these powers. So I do have a platform called Daily Clout that I founded so that everybody could pass legislation and run for office, not just the elites or the insiders. It's transpartisan. And in the face of this crisis, a group of citizens have started a 5 freedoms campaign. As you mentioned, number 1 is no mask mandates, no emergency law. Our Constitution forbids emergency powers in an open-ended way. Freedom to assemble, what you were talking about, worship, to engage in trade forever. It's unlawful to restrict worship or trade or assembly in our democracy. Number 4 is no vaccine passports. Super scary technology I've been talking about. And number 5 is open schools immediately. So these are citizens, and it's nonpartisan, but they're getting a ton of traction.
But why are you not getting more support from the left for this? You're a famous figure on the left. Are you feeling a little lonely in this time?
I mean, yes, but I think that's kind of the wrong thing to focus on right now. It's definitely true. I've got a list of 5 states that have signed on to aspects, I won't read it, but aspects of the 5 freedoms commitment. And unfortunately, all these leaders, or fortunately, I guess for you, but all these leaders are Republicans. And, from, Idaho, Missouri, South Dakota, it's all Republicans leading the fight. I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat.
I know. You voted for Biden.
I did vote for Biden. Well, I mean, that's another conversation. I couldn't bring myself to vote for Trump. But I guess what I'm trying to say, Mark, is that debate is really, it has to be part of the past. We have to be winter soldiers now. This crisis has never been worse, and we have to join together across party lines. If my people on the left won't join me, I have to create new allies and form new friendships. And that's true for people across the political spectrum, because saving the Constitution, saving our freedoms is more important than partisanship right now.
No, that's all true, Naomi. Thank you for joining us, and do let us know if you get more support on the left, because I don't want to think you've been a distinguished figure on the left. I don't want to think of you spending the rest of your life agreeing with fellas like me and Tucker. That's no way to live. So let us know if any of the left get on with it.
Thank you. I'll agree with any patriot who comes along, but thank you for your kind words, and from your mouth to God's ears, as my grandmother would say.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Naomi.